this quite often, but I think we're all here for the same reason. So I just want to say hello and welcome to our PMI-SAC virtual dinner meeting. We are still calling this a dinner meeting, but as you can tell, this dinner for everybody is very different. I'll ask everybody if they can to mute themselves as they come in, just so we can make sure we can focus on our speaker this evening. But with that said, of course, we are very fortunate to have the speaker that we had this evening. Mark Lyons has worked globally for over 25 years. He's helping organizations transform from traditional to lean and agile enterprises. As we were chatting before, he's authored multiple books on discipline agile, and today he's going to talk to us about why agile has struggled in the past and what can we do about it. I will ask that if you do have questions, Mark is available, and he's graciously said he will stick around for as long as necessary afterwards. So let's all get comfortable, but please put them in the chat box and we will certainly get to them. And I'll just pass it over to our president, Candida, to have a little opening welcome word before we pass it over to Mr. Lyons.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kevin. Mark, definitely want to welcome you. Yes, I know we talked about this earlier. Really missed that face-to-face, our discussions. I know I've met you at a couple of conferences. Thank you so much for your time. I know that today we are really excited to just hear so much of, what is out there, how it aligns with PMI and how it aligns with us in our community of practice. So thank you so much for attending and offering to speak. And everybody, thank you for joining us. I know this is your dinner hour, so hopefully it's going to be all worth it, and we're definitely going to serve you up a delicious event.
All right. With that, thank you very much. It's lovely introductions. And I'm thrilled to be here this evening. For those of you who are on the call when I joined this, I live in Calgary, and so it's a real treat for me to be out to speak to my home chapter. I was saying that a typical week for me, I do 2 or 3 or 4, sometimes more presentations to chapters around the world, as well as conferences and other kinds of things. So, but you only have one home chapter, so this is wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me. Yeah, so discipline, and because we have a little bit more time today, I won't have to race through the material, which is really nice. Please put your questions into the chat, and I'll try to make sure that we get to all of them today. Discipline Agile, just a bit of history, started in 2009 when Scott Ambler, my co-author and co-creator of Discipline Agile, was the worldwide lead for Agile and Lean methods at IBM. And so it's quite a responsibility globally, right? And he knew that Scrum just simply isn't enough guidance for teams to be successful, and they have to learn how to fill in the gaps. Scrum doesn't teach you about estimating. I mean, you may learn about estimating in a Scrum course, but that's actually not part of Scrum. It doesn't teach you about testing and about how to hit Agile on time, on budget, and those kinds of things. Architecture. The Scrum is described by 13 pages. That's what the Scrum guide is. Not much there. What there is gold, but it's not enough to get the job done. So Scott realized we needed a more robust Agile and coined the term disciplined Agile delivery, DAD. And then most of the world still calls us DAD, even though we've dropped the last D, because we've expanded the scope of disciplined Agile beyond just the delivery, IT team delivery, to the entire enterprise. And I'll explain that tonight. So that was 2009, 2010. He asked for my feedback in terms of the workshops he was building. Then he liked the feedback and said, hey, can you help me write the first book? And I was kind of blown away, to be honest with you, because I've written lots of articles over the years at that point, but I've never written a book. And he had already written, if you know anything about Scott, he's quite famous. He had written 26 books, 26. It's crazy, on IT stuff. And so for him to write his 27th with me is a real treat. And as I say, the rest is history. Came out with a book in 2012. He left IBM. We started Scott Ambler and Associates and continued to refine DAD ever since. And by the way, we were a consulting company as well. So we didn't just write books. We did this. We got many stories of successful delivery. If you've heard me speak before, you've heard me talk about how, actually it was my last engagement before I joined PMI, Papa John's, the pizza company, was a real treat for me. And it's kind of a pun, but a real treat for me to learn more about the pizza business and basically really turned around their delivery of their supporting systems, IT, as well as business processes. And they use DA for that across the board. So I think when I tell you about DA, what the response I often get back from people is, where has this been? This is so obvious. We need something like this. It's pragmatic. It provides choice. It adjusts your approach based on context. It works with any kind of agile. It's agnostic. So people say, Mark, why haven't we heard about this? It is so great. Why haven't we heard about it? Well, because Mark's a little Canadian company in Calgary, Canada, with no marketing budget. So the way we spread the word about DA was by speaking and writing, and that's no way to do marketing. So if you've heard of something called the Scaled Agile Framework, or SAFe, not used very much in Calgary from what I can tell, but it's used at most of the large companies around the world for doing large scale agile, where you've got 100, 200 people rebuilding an insurance application or something. They've been very successful, but they have a huge marketing budget and global presence and all those kinds of things. We did not. Now what's changed is we're part of PMI. So right away, we have 302 chapters, 600,000 members around the world. And we're really getting the word out there. That's the good news. The bad news is, because Mark is so inwardly focused right now on explaining to PMI what DA is about, we've kind of dropped the ball in terms of getting the message outside of PMI. Because what we need to do is to invite the Agile community into PMI to say, we're not just an old-fashioned waterfall company. We're way more than that. We have best-in-class Agile. We've got this thing called citizen development and wicked problem solving. These are amazing tools that we're adding into the PMI portfolio. And I've seen the roadmap and where we're going. I report to Sunil, and we got really exciting stuff coming. And I think, that's going to provide more value to you, the chapters. And by the way, in Agile, we train the entire team, right? We don't just train a project manager. So the implications for the chapters is you could tremendously expand your membership when you start to bring in testers and BAs. I know you already bring in BAs and developers into the family. So tremendous opportunity up there. I take part of responsibility for this. Need to do a better job of getting the word out there to say, hey, come into PMI. We're a modern company. We got some pretty cool stuff. Come take a look. So speaking of cool stuff, let me tell you about DA. So as you know, I saw this on a slide recently. I thought it was pretty good. PMI helps people and organizations work smarter so that they can drive the change they want to see. You're going to see us use the term change makers, because that's what you all are. I really like that phrase, because it's not a project manager. It's not a Scrum master. We learn how to affect change. And the mechanism in which you can do it. There's so many different ways to do it. And so the theme of my latest talk is, it's been 20 years since the Agile Manifesto was written, 2001. And it's not, and a lot's happened in 20 years. And so it's a good time to reflect on, how are we doing? Are we all Agile yet? Are we there? So executives have spent tons of money on certifications and trainings and consultancies. And I'm hearing from some executives, I didn't really get all these benefits I was promised. I really don't know that we've really changed that much. And why haven't we figured this out yet? And by the way, and I run into this, I talk to executives regularly where they say a lot of high profile Agile failures. And so why is that if Agile is so great? And there's some data behind this that suggests that, things aren't as great as you might hear some firms say. Don Reifer did a survey of 1,500 Agile teams, 150 organizations, and he found that the average productivity improvement was 7 to 12% in a basic Agile method like Scrum. And if you're using one of these large scale frameworks like SAFe, you can expect a 3 to 5% productivity improvement. I don't know about you, but I find this kind of underwhelming. For all the promise that Agile has, people aren't getting the big bang benefits that they expected. And so why is it that we're still struggling? And why is it that we're debating about my method is better than yours? Is it Scrum or SAFe, or there's other methods out there you might have heard of, like Lean, Kanban, extreme programming. Everybody's got their favorite. and so why are we still bickering about my agile is better than your agile? You may have seen this quote, a popular quote: for every complex problem, there is an answer that is clear, it's simple, but it's wrong. Okay, and this is the problem, is that organizations can be referred to as complex adaptive systems. I know it's fancy terms, but basically means there's lots of moving parts and lots of different interfaces, and each of these little cells, if you think about it, inside the organization isn't sitting still. They're evolving in different ways, in different directions. So it's really difficult to be predictive and to have a simple solution to how to make that thing called an organization, how to make it really effective in delivering the flow of value to the customer. People are trying to simplify it. And that is essentially what I believe to be the huge problem here. Organizations are looking for simple solutions. They buy a framework or a method, and then they declare themselves some kind of shop. So we're a Scrum shop, we're a safe shop, we're a Kanban shop, or hybrid shop, or whatever it is. Hybrid probably is closest to the truth than any of these other terms, by the way. So you can't just buy a method, put it into your organization, expect to be agile. So being disciplined means that we need to invest to learn our options, to optimize the overall system for our situation, and then to accelerate the delivery of value to customers. So that's what I want to focus on in this talk, is the importance of learning and then using that knowledge to optimize and accelerate the delivery of value, which is really what we're trying to do here. And this is a message that I do this message for PMI folk, but also companies. And what I want to suggest or point out to something that you all know should be obvious to you. If you've got a traditional project that is managing in a traditional way, organizations expect you to bring the appropriate experience and knowledge to the task. And PMP has become, the de facto standard for people who really get project management, right? Thousands of hours of real world experience, an extensive body of knowledge, and passing a challenging exam. A very credible, worthwhile certification. What happens on the agile side? So if you're a PMO and you say, okay, this is an infrastructure project, doesn't really make sense to be agile, go do your thing. And by the way, let's get a PMP to do that for us. Then you got another project saying, you know what, we're building a website, or we're, as I mentioned, an example of we're replatforming an insurance system or implementing SAP or something, production accounting. We're going to take an agile approach to that. So what do we need? Well, we don't need project managers for agile. So we're going to have an agile certified master of some sort. And what are their qualifications? A 2-day certification course, no experience. The Scrum guide is 13 pages, and pass a guaranteed to pass trivial test. So a lot of times the business doesn't know that the leader of a Scrum team often, not always, but often doesn't know anything about project management. They don't know what risk management is. They don't have any interest in any kind of governance. And then things go wrong. And Agile gets blamed. And it's not Agile's fault. It's that the bar's too low. And I'm saying to businesses, I'm saying to PMOs, that it's time to raise the bar. You should have the same expectations of your Agile teams that you do of your traditional projects. Why wouldn't you? So here comes the toolkit to save the day. The toolkit, I won't read this definition, but essentially it's over 1,000 practices, nicely organized into, you could sort of think of it as a Wikipedia for Agile, but it's more than a Wikipedia. It actually provides advice for which of those practices make sense in different kinds of situations. And this really makes it unique. It's not just 50 different ways of doing requirements. It's where personas might be useful, where a UI prototype might be useful, where stories or not doing user stories might be a better choice. That's what makes it different. And folks, there's nothing else out there like it. There is no equivalent to DA. People ask us, who do you compete with? Well, we compete with SAFe for mind share. We compete with Scrum, absolutely, for mind share, but they're methods, and a skinny one at that, if you're thinking about Scrum. We are the techniques that help those methods become successful. Nobody else has read the 100 books and pulled all the techniques together from dozens of methodologies into one cohesive, well-organized reference. And that's what the toolkit is. Right? So we talk about the principles, promises, and guidelines of DA, and I could do an entire talk on this, and I'd be happy to come back and do one. But I'm going to point out to you some of the things that are my favorites in the principles, promises, and guidelines, because this talks to the DA mindset. We want to delight customers. This is why we're doing this, right? And how do you delight customers? Well, be awesome. Be awesome seems kind of corny, but in my experience, and the reason I'm so passionate about this is because I've been very fortunate in my career to be brought in as a consultant in a situation where things were bad. Unpredictable project delivery. That was Papa John's issue. By the way, they're a case study, so I can talk about it. But they weren't getting reliable delivery. We had agile teams saying they were going to deliver a mobile app in Q2, never happened. And then the COO had to explain to the board why we weren't hitting targets. So when Mike Nettles asked me to come into Papa John's, I had helped him with a company called Panera Bread in the past. So he knew about DA, he knew what we could do. So he asked me, he said, come do for Papa John's what you did for Panera and Mark. So what I always do is ask executives, where does it hurt? Is it a reliable delivery? Is it the flow of value, like IT isn't delivering enough value? Is it quality? Is it morale, attrition? Because that's how we can customize our agile approach to and measure, by the way, improvements to any of those issues. Could be one of those things, could be all of them. So my point is that I've been very fortunate to come into situations where things are bad. And by using a disciplined approach to rolling out agile, every single time we leave the client is in a better place and people are happier. And this means a lot to me because we spend so much time of our lives working. We deserve to be happy and feel like we're creating value and not doing wasteful work. And this is what agile can do for us. It can help us focus on the stuff that adds value and not do the stuff that doesn't. And that makes us more awesome. That means we deliver more, the customer is happier, our bosses are happier, we're happier. It's a very good feedback cycle. So be awesome. We need to recognize that context counts. The way you do agile on a simple website development project is going to be different than if you're implementing a production accounting system or if you're building software for medical devices. You can use agile in all those things, but in some cases you're going to be less agile, let's be honest, than in building a simple website where the worst thing that can happen is there's a bad web page that I can fix in 2 minutes and upload a new version. If you're building software for the Mars rover and there's a bug, a little harder to fix, isn't it? So your context counts is what I'm saying. And sometimes you're not going to be 100% agile. Sometimes you're going to be a hybrid. Sometimes you're going to be leaning towards a more of a traditional approach, and that's okay. And this is the thing, is that the agile community tends to think things are black and white. It's this way or it's that way. If you do this, you're doing agile. And if you don't do that, you're not doing agile. That's ridiculous. We need to understand that context counts. We need to be pragmatic about it. We need to bring a set of choices. Scrum isn't the only way to go. Sometimes there's another approach called Lean, which is much more effective than what Scrum is. So because we're agnostic, we support all that. And you pick the one that makes sense for you. Moving on to promises, one of my favorites is create psychological safety and embrace diversity. So this, you can consider this slide kind of a modernization of the Agile Manifesto. Back in 2001, Manifesto was written by a bunch of old white guys, software developers, no diversity whatsoever. Certainly psychological safety wasn't something that they talked about, or diversity. It's important. We know that diversity makes us stronger and better. So we explicitly call it out in our promises. Improving predictability. I'll move over to guidelines. One of my favorite ones is create effective environments that foster joy. I've told you about how you should have joy if you do this properly. And by the way, this is the role of modern middle management, is to create these environments that do foster joy. And also the next bullet, to change culture by improving the system. Often you have great people, but they're stuck in a bad system. It's not their fault. So the job of modern day management is to, by the way, lead rather than managing, and to improve the system so that the teams can reach really their performance potential. So I got to move on. So much to say there. This is the scope of the DA. And so it goes beyond IT. Really important that, and I'm going to talk more about this towards the end of the presentation, the importance of these other supporting areas also being agile. Now, this is not an org chart. All these hexes, we call them process blades, fancy term. Basically, it means if you double click on these, this is where you can find agile guidance for how you can be agile in these other areas. Because if they should have joy as well, they should learn about modern portfolio management techniques, modern finance techniques, different ways of budgeting, for instance. And there's ways to do that. And we have that in the DA toolkit. Now, to be quite honest, in some of these hexes, we don't have content yet, like legal. We don't have any content in the legal area. But one of the beautiful things about joining PMI is we now have the resources to work with other associations. I'm meeting tomorrow morning, for instance, with the largest accounting membership organization in the world tomorrow. And we're talking about ways that we can pull in, accounting and finance guidance into the DA toolkit to supplement the agile approaches that we know already. So we have a blend, a hybrid of traditional financial guidance and agile financial guidance. So we're working with associations to help build out this material is what I'm saying. We got multiple layers here. At the bottom, we got the foundational layer, and I touched on the principles, promises, guidelines. Basic agile and lean guidance that you can apply to any kind of project does not need to be IT. I'm going to move up now the discipline DevOps layer. This is the IT layer. And the heart of the IT layer is discipline agile delivery, DAD. As I mentioned, this is where it all got started. And the Choose Your Wow book, if you've seen it, that is now being PMI branded, is the basis. This is where the discipline agile delivery content is. It's a 400-page book, but that's because it's, remember, 1,000 practices. It's very, very rich, and you don't have to memorize it. You learn how to reference it, and just it's like an encyclopedia. You don't read encyclopedias. You just pull them out when you want information about it to help you solve a problem. So if you're taking the Scrum Master Cert or the Senior Scrum Master Cert, the content would come from disciplined agile delivery. And then in the other areas, we talk about value streams. I'll talk a little bit about that in this talk. And then the highest level is the agile enterprise layer. So over time, you're going to see us build out the content in all of these things, because that's what a real, true agile organization is. Okay, so learn. Let's focus on learning. We need to supercharge our skills. And I've struggled over the years to explain the value of the toolkit and what it is. And I've gone back and forth between different kinds of analogies, race cars and all sorts of things. But I find that I've come back to this one because this is where I get comments from people, oh, the light bulb going on, and they get what DA is. If you have this marketplace of ingredients, consider these all the different kinds of practices that you might potentially use to be more effective on your project. Some are traditional, like a software requirement specification. Some are very agile, like a user story. And there's a whole bunch in between. And by the way, some requirements techniques are diagrammatic, pictures. And best way to communicate, find out what the needs are from our customers is to use a mix of textual stuff and diagrammatic stuff. That's how we get to a collective, a shared understanding of what the true need is. But here's the problem is that if you take a Scrum course, you only learn about one way to do requirements called user stories. And it's 1 or 2 sentences to describe a feature. And then there's a few sentences to describe how to test that feature. But it's very sparse. And that is because Agile wants us to just talk about stuff, just have conversations and not write stuff down. If you're sitting next side by side with the business person and you're building a website together, yeah, you don't need to write anything down because they'll just tell you, change that color. I don't like that purple. But if you're doing anything of any sophistication, you're going to have to write stuff down. And then what are your options? So the world is full of these ingredients. Problem is people don't know what they are because we're not investing in training. We've set the bar so low. Take a 2-day cert and boom, you get to raise your rate by $10 an hour because you're certified Scrum Master. That's not doing the business any favors. In fact, it's setting false expectations. So we've got all these options. We don't know what they are. And we don't know which ones work in different situations, by the way, because a fundamental aspect of Agile is we adapt our approach for our situation. Context counts, right? And choice is good. So here's kind of the frank statement from the presentation is the typical Agile team is inadequately skilled to truly optimize its ways of working. We're just not educated enough. Like I'm an old guy, I've been doing this for literally decades, 25 years, and more than that actually. And back in my day, when I was a young whippersnapper, nobody was going to trust me with leading a project unless I was properly educated. So I read tons of books. That's where my process background came. If you heard of something called the UML, Unified Modeling Language, 13 different types of diagrams to help you diagram the problem and the solution that you're going to deliver. Nobody learns that anymore. The good news is we've taken the good stuff in the UML and we've popped it into a toolkit. So it's still there for you to use, but you don't have to read that big book that I have to read. Okay, but there is a big book, but that's because it brings together all the stuff from the different methodologies. So side by side, comparing to the Scrum guide, of course. Now, the way I'm describing it may sound like I'm criticizing Scrum. I am, but I'm not. because Ken and Jeff, who created Scrum, had no intention of trying to tell people how to test. Not even one way, let alone 90 different ways to test. They said, we'll give you a kernel of process, we'll keep it small, and then you got to figure out the rest. And that's fair. Call it what it is. That was what they wanted to do. But the problem is people don't have the knowledge to go beyond the 13 pages to really truly be effective. This is why Agile fails in many situations. So just to compare and contrast, on the left-hand side, in a typical Agile Cert, you don't learn about risk management. You may learn a little bit about estimating, but only usually one estimating technique. You don't learn about governance. In fact, a lot of Agilists say we don't need no stinking governance. When they say that, that tells me they don't even know what governance is, because part of governance is status. And a daily stand-up or daily scrum, the Scrum calls it, is a status. There's more than that, but at minimum, it's reporting a status. A burn down chart or a Kanban board with sticky notes on it is a way of doing a live project plan, live status. Guess what? That's governance. So Agile teams have it, but they don't go far enough. They don't talk about when is the appropriate time to update the business on the status of the project, the health. Are we on track, on spend? What's the status of our risks? Those high risks, how are they being mitigated? Agile doesn't teach you that stuff. And you know what? It's baked into DA. It's part of the toolkit. So look at this, not 53 techniques for requirements, 93 different techniques for testing. It's nice to have choice. You may only use one testing technique, but I guarantee there's lots of testing techniques you may never have heard of before. So this is where the toolkit can help you be more effective. Now, how do you find all that? If you got all these strategies, people say to me, Mark, it sounds complicated. I couldn't possibly learn that. I can't deal with 1,000 things. It's not that hard, folks. It really isn't that hard. We've organized it so it's easy to find stuff. First of all, these are basic goals of any kind of project, IT or not. It doesn't have to be IT. You're going to need a team or teams. And when you form a team, if you don't already have one in place, if you already have one in place, boom, check, done, go on to the next one. But if you need to form a team, you're experienced project managers, you get this. I need to understand how many people, what skills do they need to have, experience, how many teams do I have? There's a set of teams. Where are they going to work? At home? We were just talking about this. In an office? Am I going to outsource it? Am I going to use full-time employees? Is it going to be distributed between here and India? Question, 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 answer, answer, answer. These are your options. And the TA toolkit helps you not forget stuff. So it prompts you, so have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? So you just find the goal that you're interested to learn more about. And I'm going to pick one like Explore Scope. These are where you find the requirement strategies. I need to understand what the scope of this project is. And behind it, we have something called the goal diagram. And what you see here is for exploring scope, I've got decision points or things, different ways to describe the scope. I may want to explore the purpose, explore how I'm going to use it, explore the domain. Maybe there's conflicting terminology. Do we call our customers, clients, guests? We better get on the same page before we start slapping names all over screens and things and the database names and all that kind of stuff. So maybe doing a domain model or a data model might be a good way to flesh out what our common terminology is before we get too deep into the project. Get the idea? So the bolded italicized options are good default choices if you want to do one from this particular group. Of course, you're not going to do all these. You're certainly not going to do all the bolded ones. But if you're going to start with one in a particular group, bolded italicized means they're good places to start. If you see an arrow beside the list, it means that the choices at the top are typically better than the choices at the bottom, more agile. So you should aspire to do the things closer to the top of the list if you want to maximize your agility. Okay. Now, so you may not understand what some of these things are. Well, guess what? We explain them. That's why the book is so big. So we have a definition of each of the techniques, often a reference like Wikipedia I see in this here. And on the right-hand side, trade-offs. So a guidance for when a particular technique might be useful for you. So I sometimes tell the story about how when I was Papa John's, the new version of the book. By the way, Choose Your Wow is the second edition of the first book. So we didn't call it Discipline Agile Delivery second edition. We tried to be a little bit sexier with the marketing. So we called it Choose Your Wow, Choose Your Way of Working, but it's second edition of the dad book. And so I'm at Papa John's, and I'm walking around from team to team, helping them in their daily meetings and all that kind of stuff, and estimating sessions and this and that. And I'd be carrying the book around with me, and people would laugh and they say, "Didn't you write that book, Mark? Why do you need it?" I said, "Well, I wrote it, but I don't have it memorized." And I might be in a retrospective where the team's talking about why they didn't deliver a good user experience in their mobile app. It's like, I did all the stories they asked, I could deliver all the features, but they're still not happy. They say it's hard to use. We don't understand how our businesses wanting to use the application. How can we get better? So as a coach, I say, hey team, why don't we pull out the Explore usage in the book, grab your book, and let's turn to that and look at what our options are. And people look at the options and they go, you want personas, they're a good way to understand our users as people, real people, and how they would normally use the app. We describe them, they're fictional, but we describe them as people so that we can have empathy for how they might want to find a pizza on the mobile app. And that way we'll deliver a better user experience with that empathy. And they go, oh yeah, great, let's try that in the next sprint. So I close the book and I walk off to the next team. Like, yeah, job done, right? It's not that hard. So people say, it's so complicated, Mark. No, it's not. So goal diagrams, think of the goal diagrams and all the things I just showed you as the pantry of ingredients. I get agile people. So when we go into a company, we typically, first of all, I don't do this anymore because I'm at PMI, but we would train everybody in the team. It's not just the Scrum Master. By the way, the DA Scrum Master Cert is for all team members. It's not just for Scrum Master. Yes, you get a Scrum Master Cert, but all team members should understand these options. You'll have better process improvement meetings if you do. So the toolkit is your pantry of ingredients. Life cycles, what other people call methods, are like starter recipes. So Scrum is an example of a recipe that doesn't have very many ingredients. It's like the mac and cheese of the Agile world, okay? So what I'm here to tell you is DA teaches you how to be a chef. So you can expand your toolkit beyond mac and cheese and maybe throw in some lobster and saffron or whatever makes mac and cheese taste better. Okay, so and that's the recipe versus pantry thing. And hopefully now if you get it, you understand how the pantry can really make you more effective regardless of what recipe you use. That's essentially the bottom line there. Now, the toolkit is you as a PMI member, you get the PDF as a free download. If you didn't know that. I personally don't like reading PDFs, but it's there for free. Or of course you can buy it off Amazon or is it PMI bookstore where it is, but definitely on Amazon. But we also have it available online, free to members. So the DA browser, something we actually created pre-PMI for Scott and I to create the diagrams. And so you have to log on. I mean, I'm not logged on to PMI here, and I have, I don't have a version. I thought I had a version. So anyway, I'll start up. By the way, we have it in different languages, and we created this application to actually generate the diagrams for us. So all the diagrams in the books and on the website are created with this tool. This tool is a read-only version of the browser. Come on. Why is it taking so long? Here we are. So you click on goal on the left-hand side, and the diagram comes up on the right. And then you can click on any of the decision points here, and the tables come up. So you can see the tables of different ways of funding, fixed price, variable, etc. Let me take a look at another one here. Evolve your way of working is an ongoing goal. By the way, phases. You see these are grouped into phases: inception, construction, and transition. It's a grouping mechanism, and in many agile projects, they want to use phases. You don't just get $500,000 to build a new app unless you explain to your business what you're going to do with the money. A lot of the agile community says we don't need no stinking upfront planning. We just jump in, give us money, we build stuff every couple of weeks. I'm here to tell you, based on my experience, that actually doesn't happen very much. You need to give your stakeholders some kind of idea for how long this is going to take and how much it's going to cost before you give you the money. So for that, we have an inception phase. It can be one day. I've done it in one day with a bunch of people in a room, flip chart, paper, whiteboards, and we get together a high-level list of features and a schedule and what our team's going to look like. And maybe ideally we have the stakeholder in the room with us, the customer, and they go, yeah, I see what I'm going to get for $500,000, but you know what? We're going to govern this. So every month I'm going to want an update on the status to make sure we're still on track before I release the rest of the funding for you or something. So my point is, you can do this in a day, you can do it in 6 weeks. Context counts. So we have an Inception to do these kinds of things you see on the left-hand side. But if you don't need Inception, don't do it. This is where Agile people get all wound up about DA. They go, Inception, construction, transition, that looks like waterfall traditional to me. We don't have phases in Agile. And by the way, if you heard of something called the Rational Unified Process, or RUP, I used to teach it. I used to work for a company called Rational Software. That's what these are 3 of the 4 phases they used to have. So anybody who knows RUP, and by the way, it wasn't very agile. It was kind of, sort of agile, but in many ways it wasn't. So people go, oh, this is RUP, this is not agile. No, you do not need to use the phases. If you're in a product kind of approach and you finish a release and then on Monday you start second release and you go through 5 sprints and deploy release 2.0, you don't need an Inception, and that's fine. So just understand everything in the toolkit is optional. I get frustrated with people who just jump to conclusion without really understanding what they're looking at. So you can see here that they're evolving your way of working. And one of the things is you can pick which kind of method you want to use, like Scrum or Safe or Less or Lean or Agile, continuous delivery, DevOps kind of stuff. All right. So the other nice thing about the tool is that you can also have additional resources. Let's see if I can find a more interesting one here. If I go back to secure funding, click on here. Some people wonder, how do you do CapEx, OpEx in Agile? It's easy to do. And there's an article on it written by Scott, myself, I believe. So the nice thing about an online tool is that we actually have links out to supplemental content beyond the toolkit. Okay, so thus endeth the demo. Go back to my presentation. All right, let me know if you can't see the screen. I'm assuming you can. It's in 6 different languages. Japan loves this. So there's a company in Japan just starting to roll out the toolkit in Japanese. More languages probably to come. So the idea here is that, remember I said choice is good, context counts. We need to pick a life cycle that makes sense for us. But we have 2 Scrum-based life cycles. What the differentiator is, well, based on Scrum. And what Scrum has is time boxes, or 2-week, typically 2-week sprints, what we typically call iterations. But that's what Scrum is. You kind of batch work up every 2 weeks and then deliver something of value every 2 weeks. And that's fine. Time boxed approach. We also have a continuous delivery flavor of it, where every 2 weeks you actually do deploy something. And by the way, I say deploy. A lot of what I'm talking about is IT, but you don't have to use IT. Papa John's used the Lean lifecycle in their marketing department. So we have 2 flavors of Lean. Lean is different. It doesn't have time boxes. It doesn't have these sprint things. You do work as you have the capacity to do it. You pull it. See here, you see the pictures of a what's called a Kanban board, or a task board. Could be in Jira, could be on a whiteboard with sticky notes. I prefer the latter, sorry. And you pull the stickies across, not started, in progress, done, or being tested, or whatever your columns are for your workflow. But it does not, you don't spend time every 2 weeks sitting in a room planning and estimating the work. You just have a continuous flow of work. And in some situations, like maintenance teams, operational teams, or infrastructure teams that are ticketing systems, Lean is much better than the Scrum approach. So I feel sorry for organizations that say we're a Scrum shop and everything has to be a Scrum team, because Scrum in many situations is actually a very bad fit. We have project-based life cycles, and we have more product-based life cycles, where you go from release to release. There's a big, maybe some of you folks have run into it out there, but there's a big movement out there from projects to products. And there's a great book that I have by Mick Kirsten. He's a friend of mine, a very solid book, and everybody's jumping all over this, saying everything should be a product. No. and frustrating to me when people are so myopic that, yeah, and if you're building software, everything should be a product. In fact, if you're building a mobile app at Papa John's, that should be a product. It's always going to have another release. There's always going to be improvements. But if you're rolling out SAP, it has arguably that could be a product approach as well, that example. But if you're building a bridge or a pipeline or something, it's a project, has a beginning, has an end. You form a team, you disband the team. So don't let anybody, folks, tell you that if you're a project manager and you're doing projects, that's not relevant anymore is ridiculous thought. Good to have, the best thing is to have both approaches in your toolkit. You also have an exploratory approach. This is, if you've heard of the lean startup, exploring a market, building a bit of something, getting some data on whether or not the market wants it before you commit to a larger project. That's what exploratory is. A program is if you have many teams building one solution. So this is a scaling approach, many teams, one solution. So it's nice to have choice. I hope you agree. So the key message there is we need to invest to learn our options. People are inadequately skilled typically to do the job right. Once you have all that knowledge, now you know what's in the pantry, right? And you know what saffron is. You know where saffron makes a dish better. I know it makes it yellow. Beyond that, I don't know much about saffron. So we need to optimize now based on this new knowledge. And this is, remember this presentation, just looking at the time check here. We're doing great. I'm reflecting on the last 20 years versus what I think is going to happen in the future. And I would ask yourselves, in the kinds of organizations that you work, are those organizations following, or are they leading? Are they trying to keep up with the competition, or are they trying to innovate? Are they trying to be a leader? As you know, sometimes following doesn't lead to a good result. And another question, when I go into organizations, I did tell you, I normally ask, where does it hurt? Because that helps me understand where we need to focus our Agile toolkit and metrics. I also ask them, who do you fear? Who do you admire? Because a lot of times they will bring consultants in when things aren't good, right? And if you look at the companies on the right, if you're a Ford, which car company do you admire? Or are you just trying to keep up? Probably Tesla, right? That's the one that you admire and probably fear. And if you're a bank, are you trying to, if you're a Royal Bank, are you trying to be like BMO? Or do you worry about Google that sells insurance online and doesn't have a brick and mortar presence? So this is what we need to jump over these companies. If you say, well, Bank of Montreal uses SAFe for Scrum or something, that I should do it. Well, at best, you're keeping up. You're not competing. Spotify is a good example. Now, Spotify is known to do some pretty cool stuff with Agile. And a lot of it, by the way, is just renaming terms. They call teams squads. They call COPs guilds. I like that term, by the way, guild, because it speaks craft to me. Chapters, they have cool terminologies for different things, but it's more than that. I'm not giving Spotify enough credit, but the thing about Spotify is they created a way of working for them that made sense for a Swedish online music company. And by the way, they had one of the best Agile coaches in the world helping them to do that, Henrik Nyberg. And then they did some YouTube videos about how to do Agile with Spotify techniques, and people watched the videos and they were cool videos. They go, ooh, squads, tribes, chapters, guilds. I want to be Spotify. So people started copying their approach. Well, here's the thing, folks. That's the way Spotify did Agile about 8 years ago now. 8 years ago. They don't do that anymore. People at Spotify laugh when they hear that companies are copying what they used to do 8 years ago, because they've moved on and they've learned that what they used to do doesn't work anymore. So the beauty of Spotify is not how they do Agile. The beauty of Spotify is they took responsibility for their own way of working and figured out what makes sense for them. And by the way, it's not going to be one approach inside the organization. Different parts of the company are going to use different approaches. Okay. So using another approach like Scrum or SAFe is a good start. And it is a good start. So if you're new to Agile, start with Scrum. But by the way, Scrum is in DA. So I would just jump straight into DA and use Scrum. But you're using more than Scrum, because you'll need more than what's in Scrum to be successful. So start where you are is kind of what I'm saying, and then improve from there. Let's talk a little bit about guided continuous improvement. When you're adopting a method or a framework, it's like a J curve. You typically take a performance hit as you learn. And once you learn, you would expect to improve, and you typically do. But we also see that companies typically level off in terms of their improvements as they exhaust all the guidance provided by the framework. And in Scrum, you exhaust that pretty quick. And so then how do we continue to learn? Well, the team will try, it's called process experiments. They'll try different things on their journey to being better, being more effective, and improving quality and the throughput and all that kind of stuff. And that's called retrospectives. And that's classic continuous improvement. It's also called, by the way, Kaizen. And you learn through experimentation, and some experiments improve your process and some don't. And that's called failing fast. And the idea is the sooner we try something and it doesn't work, we learn what not to do, and then we do something better. And that's our learning journey. And we need management to be patient with us. That's part of that psychological safety as we learn. And we will fail along the way. But here's the problem I have with failing fast. It's time consuming, it's expensive. And if you're a consultant, you're learning on the customer's dime. Wouldn't it be better if we actually, because you're unique, but you're not completely unique. Some of what you're doing has been done before, and it's described in the toolkit. So you can use the guidance in the toolkit where it says, in your situation, you should do this. It's been proven to work. So you're going to fail less, you're going to learn quicker, and you're going to save your customers money on your journey to high performance, guided continuous improvement. It's a beautiful thing. And the nice thing about it is you can start where you are, you do the best that you can in the situation that you face, because not everybody is in an ideal agile situation. Do the best that you can, and always strive to get better. I run into some PMOs where they're kind of bimodal. They have some projects that can be traditional, work breakdown structure, the whole thing, project managers, etc. And then other projects could be agile. And to be agile, you have to pass a checklist. You have to have 9 or less people on a team, because that's what Agile tells you. And by the way, it's not true. And you need to, have very simple situations, no risks, and then you qualify to be Agile. This is a real shame, because most projects are kind of in between, and you should be able to apply a hybrid approach. And by the way, inside the toolkit, it's not 1,000 Agile techniques. Some, if I didn't make that clear, some of them are traditional techniques because we're pragmatic. And whereas if you go to another Agile certification, they'll say you do user stories, it's the only way to do it. And if you don't do it, you're not being Agile. It's ridiculous, because we're pragmatic and we believe that context counts. So not everything in the toolkit is completely Agile, and that's fine. You pick the one for your situation that does the best job for you. And an important message to that little rant, folks, is that it's not disruptive. This is the beautiful thing about it. Whatever you're currently doing, I don't care what you're doing, DA can make you more effective. Just, traditional, hybrid, agile, any kind of flavor, any kind of method, the DA toolkit will make you more effective. So many executives are afraid of bringing DA in because it's like, I'm admitting that whatever I'm currently doing is wrong. No, you're just trying to get better. Okay, so politically, it should be easy to adopt DA. And I don't want you to say, we're not doing Scrum anymore, we're doing DA. Don't say that. But it's unfortunate that a lot of the surveys ask a question like that. They say, are you using DA or Scrum? And people will say Scrum. Well, they're actually using DA technically. But it's a shame that we get shut out of those surveys because nobody's going to say they're using DA. First of all, they don't know what it is. And everybody inside the company calls it Scrum. So I think there's a problem in those kinds of surveys. It's like saying we use a recipe, but we don't use ingredients. Doesn't make any sense, does it? I recently started using this slide just to make it really clear, if you're familiar with these other approaches, that we're kind of in the middle. We're like the Switzerland. We're agnostic. We make all these things better. And by the way, most companies of any size are using a variety of approaches. They're not just using one technique. So that's what makes it really nice. I think that you'll start to see us use the term hybrid more. As I mentioned to some of you at the beginning of the call, we're working with some marketing organizations to try to help us get the message across better. People are afraid of it. They're afraid of PMI, they're afraid of disciplined agile because all they know is Scrum. We're not here to take your Scrum away. We're here to make you more effective with Scrum. Don't worry. Anyway, accelerate. So I talked about the importance of learning our options. Let's invest in that education. We can then use those ingredients to really spice up those recipes, make a better curry. And now we're in a position now to accelerate delivery of value to our customers, which is really what it's all about. So as I get close to wrapping up, and we're gonna have lots of time for questions, good stuff. I'll probably take I've been going a little bit slower and telling a few more stories because I know I've got a bit more time, but I still will have lots of time for questions. One thing we need to recognize, one of the reasons that Agile fails is because people don't have the right skills. That's one thing. Another reason is because a lot of people think it's just about software, it's just about IT. So you have all these Scrum teams and you bring in coaches and Scrum Masters and stuff, but you're still not getting agility. Why is that? Well, because the teams do not work in isolation. They have to work with these other supporting areas. They need money. They may have to go to finance. They may have a PMO to have to do a business case for them. You're going to have people management, or what some people call HR. When I need new developers and new testers or whatever, I may need to procure stuff, marketing, etc. Right? So teams do not work in isolation. They need to work with these other enterprise groups. Now, the problem is these enterprise groups often are not agile themselves. And you hear agile teams saying, oh, our enterprise architecture group, they suck because they want all this stuff done up front. They don't get agile. They're slowing us down. I can't proceed until I do a big architecture document. Or the PMO is asking for a 30-page business case, and all I want to do is a simple website. They're not agile. They're getting in my way. So they grumble about these other areas. I tell you what, I have very little patience for that. You know why? It's not their fault. They're doing what they've been trained to do. They're trying to act in the interest of the organization in the only way they know how. What hasn't happened is they haven't learned new ways of working themselves. We spend all our time coaching these IT teams. How about the other teams? How about the marketing team at Papa John's that wanted to learn how to use a Kanban board for their marketing campaigns, but nobody talked to them, rather than taking 6 months to do a marketing campaign, which was frustrating everybody. So have you seen, so I sometimes ask organizations, are your supporting groups impediments or enablers to your agility? And you know what the typical answer is. I'll give you some examples. Finance says, your funding runs out next month. I need you to create a business case, a project plan with estimates, and have it reviewed by the PMO before I can extend your funding for another 3 months. And the team lead says, that means my teams will need to stop for several weeks to do this planning. They'll be producing no value during this time. And they get frustrated with finance. Not finance's fault. They're just doing what they've been taught to do. HR, team lead says, I urgently need another developer for my team. And HR says, you'll need funding approved by finance, a requisition filled out, internally posted for 2 weeks before you can even start interviews. Meanwhile, the team is without a developer. This one is very common. I got 3 new features ready to ship that our customers urgently need, or 3 bug fixes. And release management says these need to be prioritized and approved at our change management committee meeting. Then they can be added to our month-end release, right? Do you know that Google deploys, like this is a stat that's 5 years old, on average every 8 seconds. Okay, so monthly releases, not agile. Quarterly releases, even worse. They're using modern techniques. It's very easy to deploy stuff on a regular basis. Whether you're using ITIL or whatever your technique is, it's very easy to make that agile. Not release manager's problem or fault. They haven't been taught what the alternatives are. Okay, so you get the idea. I got one here about database groups. They're often a bottleneck, and finance, asking for their timesheets. True story, I got Papa John's to get rid of timesheets. Nobody likes them. They're a work of fiction. They're never accurate. Some of you probably are smiling. I can't see you right now, but timesheets are a work of fiction. If you're doing agile, you're doing all kinds of things throughout the day. You may be helping with the testing. You may be helping write stories of requirements. You may be doing some design. You may be fixing some defects. And you may be creating some features. And finance wants to know the difference, whether you're doing a feature, whether you're doing a bug. And so you know how it is. Friday afternoon, you want to go golfing, and your manager says, fill out the timesheet. So a developer goes on there. They can't remember what they did this morning, let alone what they did on Monday. And so it's a work of fiction, and we all need to admit that. And finance knows it, by the way, but they're doing it because they think the auditor needs them to have that information. There's better ways to get the information than timesheets. And educated Papa John's, and they abolish timesheets, just so you know. They get better information, much less work, much more accurate, and there's just a little bit more joy throughout the organization when I don't have to do my stupid timesheet. Now, so in DA, Scrum Master, you don't learn how to tear down these impediments. You don't learn to teach the other groups new ways of working. In DA, we do. And we don't just teach you how, we teach you change management, agile change management. How do you convince finance to change? It ain't easy, but there is a way. And we teach coaches, DA coaches, how to affect that change. It's a beautiful thing. Lastly, flow. This is Flex. It's built, this is a picture that describes value streams. They start with a customer, they end with a customer, and there's a journey to learn that value. And in many cases, impediments along these ways, this journey that we need to fix, choke points. It's like pipes that are clogged. And using techniques from the DA Value Stream Consulting certification, which is brand new. Value streams, by the way, folks, if you don't know, are hot. So if you're looking for new career opportunities, I recommend you learn about value streams, because people are starting to realize it's not business processes and IT processes, it's value, and includes both of that. And if you become an expert in how to look at an organizational system and different value streams, development value streams, support value streams, operational value streams, and if you can go in, that's very valuable work to help organizations improve the throughput of value. And we have a great certification. Al Shalloway is the mastermind behind it. And I've been so busy doing other things. I basically looked at it a little bit as it went, but I took a deep dive into it recently. And I thought, wow, this is game-changing stuff. It is really an amazing certification. So look into it. And so summary, we need to learn, then we can learn the ingredients, learn some recipes, become a great chef, learn about value streams. So where the DA Scrum Master and the coach certifications are kind of a bottom-up approach. So that's enable some IT teams, but that's also sprinkle the agility into finance and marketing. Think of like champagne bubbles through the organization, getting that agility out there. The value stream stuff is looking sort of top down and around. It's like looking at the overall organization and how it actually, how do we get new wells drilled or whatever it is? How do we get pipelines in, and what's the whole process, and how can we streamline and make it better? So the two things go well together: top down value stream consulting, and the Scrum Master is kind of bottom up in the coach. So speaking of the devil, there's the new certification program. If you're an ACP, congratulations, by the way. It's a great certification. You should be proud. It is not in the Scrum category. It is a hard certification. You have to do a lot of work. You should be proud of it. DA takes it to the next level because you don't learn the toolkit in ACP. So it opens your eyes to all the options inside the toolkit, and you can go directly from there to the senior Scrum Master. If you don't have any Agile experience, start at the DA Scrum Master. It is like Scrum on steroids. It's Scrum++. You'll learn way more than you will in a certified Scrum Master class. You'll learn about lean. You'll learn about when to use one or the other or put them together, hybrid approaches, how to, and then an introduction to the toolkit, how to find stuff in the toolkit. The senior Scrum Master, deeper dive into the toolkit, more scenarios, how to deal with complex projects using Scrum, teams of teams. It really is nothing like the senior Scrum Master certification. Really, it's awesome. And it also teaches you coaching, introduction to coaching and change management and things. And then our advanced certs, so the ones on the right, the value stream consultant, brand new, just came out. And the DA coach, we had a coach certification before, but we took some time to redesign it and move some of the content around between these things. So the DA coach is going to come out in a couple of months. So brand new, start at DA SSM. If you have any kind of Agile experience, you can go directly to the senior Scrum Master. You need to have 2 years of Agile experience, any flavor, go directly to the senior Scrum Master. And just another picture, it's on the website that shows more details about each of these. Lastly, I wanted to show you this. And by the way, this is Calgary. Notice that it's a job ad in Calgary for a senior Scrum Master. Somebody brought this to my attention. I thought, wow, cool. This is where I live. And what's really cool about it is they're asking for a senior Scrum Master. They're not asking for a Scrum Master. When we did research with hiring managers, before we designed the new certification, we redesigned it. We had one before, but after PMI, we redesigned it. We asked them what they were looking for. And they said to us, Mark, there's like 1 million Scrum Masters out there. Some are 21, just got out of school, took a 2-day course, never managed a project in their life. And when I put an ad for Scrum Master, I get 1,000 resumes, and I have to weed through them all to find out who really has experience in non-trivial projects, by the way. And so they said, we really need a senior Scrum Master. So guess what? We created the senior Scrum Master cert specifically for this reason. We want something sort of like PMP that's really worthwhile, really respected. And I truly believe people will start to ask for not only any Scrum Master, they will start to ask for a DA senior Scrum Master. Because as people start to understand what's in the toolkit and just how rich it is and flexible and agnostic, that's what they want. And I also was tickled by the fact that they actually asked for discipline Agile knowledge. So I'm trying to ask myself, which company in Calgary is looking for DA and senior Scrum Masters. Pretty cool. The important point to you is, and I didn't make this point yet, I think it's really, really important, is our mission at PMI is to create more rewarding opportunities for you all. Better careers, better job opportunities, better networking opportunities, better compensation for your experience and education. And we've done that with the PMP and the other certs. We are now bringing that same approach to our Agile offerings to provide you with differentiators to help you bubble up beyond the junior certifications and a lifelong career. So the advanced ones on the right-hand side, the purple ones. So regardless of where you are in your Agile learning, you've got a place where you can aspire to grow and be rewarded appropriately for that. Okay, there's my whirlwind tour of everything DA. Quite happy. Hopefully this has been useful for you and happy to stick around. I think the opening remarks said as long as there are questions, but I have a commitment to cook some hamburgers for my family at 6:30. Got about 20, I can go beyond that, but all right, we have questions.
Thank you so much, Mark. That was awesome. It was really, really good. I think we will open it up to questions because I'm sure I see a lot of the faces that I know are going to have some. So please just go ahead. You can take yourselves off mute and fire away with some questions for Mr. Lyons here.
And no softballs. Give me some hard ones.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Tell me where I'm wrong.
Mr. Medeski, I'm going to pick on you. I'm sure you have a question or two for Mark Lyons. I see Mark is here, or Steve is here, so.
Don't be shy.
Please don't be shy. It's very rare that we get Mr. Lyons in a situation like this. So, and he asked for the hard questions too. So go ahead.
Yeah, how do I unmute my audio? There we go.
There you go. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, some good stuff. It kind of comes back to what I've seen over the last gazillion years around it's horses for courses, and that it's hard to put a label on some things. And a lot of, I mean, from what I recall, a long time ago, it was selling the PMP, and then was selling Agile, and now it's selling Discipline Agile. So how do we get that out there to the businesses, and how do we? It's nice that we do this certification, but you know, like in the days of old, it took some time to get that momentum going. How do we actually build? How does PMI help us build that momentum to basically leverage these new tools that we are picking up on now?
Yeah, that is a really good question, and I wish I had it. You asked me a hard question. I asked for it, so because I don't have the answer to that. I got ideas, and then by the way, it's not just Mark. We have a very large, we're making a really large investment in DA. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes. You know, preparing marketing campaigns and stuff to try to address this. It's exactly the questions that we ask. We have different personas. You know, we're using DA. We have different personas to describe. As an example, a persona might be I'm a PMP, and I want to tiptoe into Agile, or I've done a little bit of Agile, but I want to do more. That's a persona. But the persona I'm really worried about, I want to give more attention to is I do Agile. I'm a Scrum Master. I know I need more education. I always invest in more education, but why would I go to PMI for an Agile certification? That's a tough persona, let me tell you, because they're liable to go to a Kanban university to learn about lean, or a SAFe course to learn about scaling Agile. We're not near the top of the list. I'll just say that, because of our perception that we are project management institute, 3 words that aren't hip and cool to a lot of people. And so how do we, because we're not that, right? We used to be, but we're so much more than that now. And we will be even more Agile all the time. Already, of course, there's Agile content in the PMBOK guide. Yeah, we're there. We have something good, something very unique, and we're having difficulty getting the message out there. So we have some ideas, and because we're exploring them, I really can't share them with you right now. But know that it's top of mind for me, that we need to welcome people into our community And we're not the bad guy. We're not the old-fashioned waterfall folk. And there's still a place for that, by the way. That's not bad. Waterfall does not equal bad. It's just different for different context. So I wish I had the answer for you, Steve. It's a great question. I was saying the lingo internally is like, how do we make PMI hip to Agilists? That's hard. Little history. When I first joined PMI, and I was at head office, and I was in the office of the COO, and Sunil was there as well. That's when they were just about to come out with the new branding, new colors and everything. By the way, I've never seen so much orange in my life. But I would prefer the purples. I try not to put too much orange in my presentation. But they were going to have a logo for us which said Discipline Agile underneath the Project Management Institute. And I said, Scott and I said, you're going to kill DA before we can get out of the gate. We'll be dead in the water. So we successfully lobbied for the Discipline Agile logo. And yes, we got the PMI thing on the left-hand side. A lot of people don't know that that's PMI. But that is a marketing challenge for us. And if you have any ideas, let me know. But we got some pretty sharp marketing people. We got a couple of like the most respected marketing firms in the world working with us right now. And I think they're pretty good. So, I know one example I can share with you. I think we're going to play up the hybrid a bit more, because and value streams. Value streams are so hot, and we are the leader in that right now. I believe that our value stream consultant, there's nothing like it in the world. And I'm meeting with some very senior people over the last couple of weeks that want to learn more about our value stream management stuff. Big companies. So
the value stream, actually, I found that very interesting, and that I was a program manager a company in town, and it was all around the added value. It doesn't, and the biggest challenge was a change in organizational thinking from, what is my refining margin versus what is my margin on the barrel of crude that I pull out of the ground, as opposed to thinking, what's the company's value from oil out of the ground to oil at the gas pump? And it's a big change and shift from thinking, and it goes all the way back to compensation. What are we being measured on? And the concept that we're actually all working at the same company, not against each other.
That's a really good point. For those on the call who sometimes when I talk value streams, I know I've used a bunch of terms in this talk where people are saying I have no idea what he's talking about. I apologize for that. I can make the same mistake about value streams. For a long time, I didn't know what they were. So the easiest way to explain a value stream, I use the pizza example. I told you I learned so much about pizza when I was at Papa John's. When I pick up, by the way, this is a true story, but when Mike Nettles called me and said, Mark, I became COO at, he became CIO and then COO. I became CIO at Papa John's. I need you to come help me. And I said, great. So I'd never ordered Papa John's pizza. And so we were Pizza Hut family. So I pulled out my mobile app and I said, let's try this out. I could not order pizza. It wouldn't take my credit card. It asked for a zip code and wouldn't let me proceed until I put the zip code in. Right away, he's lost me, right? I called him up before I went in. I said, Mike, we got some problems. And he had no idea. They got Papa John's all over the world, but there's no localization. It was a horrible experience. My point is, a value stream starts when I get hungry. I say, I'm going to get Papa John's. I pick up the mobile app. Hopefully it's a good experience. I can customize my pizza. I can do half and half, like my family likes to do. It takes my credit card, and then it gets beamed up to the mothership and then down to a close franchise. Hopefully that franchise is not on the other side of the city. So it takes an hour and a half to get to me, and it's cold when it gets here. Hopefully they build the pizza properly. You don't burn it. Hopefully they get an Uber driver or whatever it is. Actually, I think they do have their own drivers, but let's say Uber driver that comes quickly and gets the pizza and keeps it warm until it gets to my house. And then hopefully it's the right pizza when I open the box. By the way, that's a big problem I learned about in the pizza industry. There's a lot of wrong pizzas delivered to people. And then hopefully I enjoy it. So it started at me and ended at me. And all those things, some of them are business, some of them are IT. And along that journey, there are many, many, many opportunities to disappoint me. I mentioned some of the problems, right? So optimizing value streams is keeping the customer delighted and compressing it, getting value cheaper, faster, high quality. I'm looking at all the aspects. And you know what? Most organizations don't build value streams that talk about all those things. And by the way, I go into companies where they've never actually experienced the whole value stream end to end. They're building the loyalty program, and they've never actually bought the Papa John's pizza. They work in silos. So what Al talks about in his is like we're organizations are structured hierarchically into these silo departments, and they pass things off between each other. And bad stuff happens in between those handoffs. So he takes a different approach. Sort of, I go like this because you saw that flow diagram. There's a reason that it's like this, not like that. So that's my mini educational segment on value streams. Thank you, Steve. Good question.
Mark, I have a question for you. What is happening with PMI-ACP? Is it in the year?
Also a good and hard question. The fact is, first of all, it's a great program, but it's different. And it's got 35 to 40,000 credentials out there. So you can't just throw it away. People have been working very hard for it. And by the way, some people are working on it as we speak. So it became kind of a hands-off thing, is the story behind that. But it's challenging for us because the naming doesn't match everything else. And it's a different approach because in the ACP program, you go and get your education and you come back and write a test. And in the DA program, as with everything now at PMI, they're sort of closing the network and creating the course materials themselves. You may know that the PMP, some teaching experiences are good and some are phenomenally bad. And as a result, the RAPs or whatever had high failure rates. And we felt like we needed to fix that. So we created the materials. I say we, it happened before I arrived. They replaced the RAP program with the ATP program. So that philosophy sticks with the DA. We create materials with their best in class, and we know that everybody's going to get a similar learning experience when they take a DA, which is different than the ACP. So there's those kinds of challenges that I don't think are helping reduce the confusion in the marketplace. And there's some other challenges out there, like PMI has several other Agile offerings. And if I were you, I'd be getting confused. It's like, what kind of Agile am I going to do? There's like 7 different types at PMI. so that's the kind of thing you don't solve overnight, because some of those things were in progress before DA joined the family. In like the PMBOK guide, the latest edition started 2 years ago, prior to the acquisition. So as a result, it has Agile guidance in it. It doesn't talk about DA. That will change. That will change. So in short, long story to give you the background, but right now I can tell you in all honesty, there's no plans to do anything with it. I think you can think of it as an experiment to see what happens with the enrollments of ACP versus DA. And I think things will evolve. If people still love ACP and don't want us to get rid of it, we'll probably keep it. We might rename it. So it's got DA in front of it or something. Discipline Agile Practitioner. I don't know. Good question.
Thank you.
That was a good question, Ernesto. I'm not sure. I know Mark's going to go make some burgers, but I don't know about anybody else. But I might go order a Papa John's pizza. So we'll see.
I love their pizza, and their headquarters is in Louisville. And yes, I got to go to Churchill Downs, see where they run the Kentucky Derby. It was off season, so I also learned about bourbon. So that was a good time in Louisville. And they have delicious pizza. I got to tell you, I just love it. Anyway, I don't know if you know the history of Papa John's, but around the time when I was there, the company was falling apart because their founder made some racial comments and things.
That's right. I remember that.
There was the Copernicus with the guy who was kneeling during the national anthem. Mm-hmm. And Papa John's was the official pizza of the NFL. And the Papa John's is person. John Schnatter, founder. And by the way, he used to get started by cooking pizza in his father's bar. I think in the back, he bought an oven, made the pizza and delivered it in a Camaro. And that Camaro was in the head office. It's been kind of cool. The old Camaro, imagine from the 70s, kind of a yellow color, not bright yellow, but anyway. Point is that created a PR fiasco because he blamed pizza sales on that event. Because it's very polarizing. You either thought he was doing a wonderful thing or you thought he was being unpatriotic. It was very polarizing. So I think actually Schnatter was saying something factual that half of the people are upset, and maybe some of them don't buy the pizza anymore. But that was interpreted as a racial slur, I believe.
Mhm.
And then he did it again, and it was worse. So he actually got unceremoniously thrown out of the company. And during the time that I was there, one day I walked in, having flown in from Calgary, and the Camaro was gone. All the stuff about him, pictures of him off the walls. So imagine trying to do an agile implementation when a lot of people worship the guy as the man, the Papa John. So it just added to my challenge. So they'll never forget.
Certainly do have to be agile then, that's for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's very stressful for employees. But so I was really focused on keeping the joy up and attrition down. Okay.
Definitely. Anybody else have any other questions before we sign off this evening? We have a few more minutes with Mark. If anybody has anything other they would
While you're
like.
thinking,
Yeah, I have a question.
sure.
So at the beginning, it's kind of hypothetical and just kind of your opinion, but at the beginning you said that Agile is 7 to 12% more productive than traditional methods or something like that.
Yeah.
And there's a number, there's a lot of various reasons for that, difficulties with enterprise groups like finance and et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
So supposing you could have a world where a lot of these barriers are overcome, what realistically do you think would be the additional productivity? Like how much quicker, how much better, or is there a way of just based on your experience, what's a realistic goal?
That's a great question, David. Because not everything's about productivity. Keeping customers may not be about delivering more value. It may be just trying to keep the customers because they're not happy. An example is I did work for a company in New York called OpenLink. They're also a case study. And they had a quality issue. They were built software for traders on Wall Street, and software was crashing. Imagine the traders' fury. So they would call up the company and scream at everybody. And the executives would scream at the managers, the managers would scream at the teams, and people were quitting. Everybody was miserable. So it's not just about productivity. Maybe the surveys that I showed you is misleading. A win for OpenLink was better quality software, and that's what we achieved. And we put in metrics to measure against the pain. That's something we teach you, by the way. There's a lot of people, they don't understand. They Google top 10 agile metrics. That's not the way to do it. You need to find out where the pain is and implement the right metrics that is going to measure improvement against the pain. So at Papa John's, I measured improvement in reliability and dependability. And at OpenLink, I measured improvement in quality. Everybody was happier because we weren't getting the phone calls from Wall Street, and nobody was getting yelled at anyway. By the way, there was no more yelling after I arrived. I said, that's the first thing that's got to stop. Right. So great question. Before I forget, I want to mention that, I do want to trigger your folks' interest, obviously, in DA. And the courses are offered instructor-led, all virtual now, of course, but there's also e-learning offerings. We have an EDASM. So if you're new to Agile, you can take it from home on your own time. So there's an on-demand version of the DA Scrum Master course. And we're about to release a couple months from now, maybe it's shorter than that, an e-learning for the DA Senior Scrum Master as well. So it's nice, choice is good. So if you want, I would always personally, so the e-learning is going to be cheaper, but sometimes you get what you pay for. I would prefer to have an instructor where I can ask questions about my situation and learn from the labs with everybody else. And they're fun, by the way. I can take no credit for the courses, but they use, have any of you heard of Miro? But it's like group whiteboarding and sticky notes and things. And so everybody's there's a lot of play involved in the course. Really, really well designed. I attended one. I had so much fun. Anything else? Was it worthwhile? Yes, Nima.
This is a question that I have in any Agile related session, and I always encourage people to have different mindset about it, and that's how Agile or discipline Agile can apply to engineering or design build or EPC projects. like oil and gas industry or mine and metals industry or construction industry as a whole, that you have the certain and concrete plan wanted by the client at the beginning and all this stuff. And I just like to have your insight about how useful it could be to have agile and discipline agile in these kind of projects.
Very useful. So there's two aspects to answering that question. One is, I'm going to tell you a story about Parliament in Ottawa. And the second thing is, this is why we have Inception, because you often need to say you're going to get it done in 6 months. ICBC, the Insurance Corporation of British Columbia, if you don't know, they do the driver's licensing and insurance for the province. Completely DA, soup to nuts, everybody trained, management included, love it. Go to, if you haven't seen it, on PMI.org, the Discipline Agile section, and listen to the case study video of Gary Eastwood, the CIO, 5 minutes long. It's all 5 minutes. Listen to him rave about what DA has done for them. A government union shop where they have to deliver stuff on fixed date. There were changes in the design and pricing of the insurance because there were way too many claims and legal lawsuits and stuff. The province was bleeding money. So they needed to redesign their insurance program and the supporting systems. It was huge. Business process changes, technology changes. And they had to hit a date. The minister said the new program will be launched on this date. So you can do that with Agile. You just have to be disciplined about it. It means that you need to have a plan at the beginning, do that during Inception. We provide, I think, about 8 different estimating techniques in the DA toolkit. So pick the estimating technique that makes sense for you. Build some contingency into your plan. Like if it's going to take 12 sprints, I would never tell the business it's going to take 12 sprints. I would tell them it's going to take 14 sprints, an extra month, but I wouldn't hide it from them either. I would say our estimates, our best guess is 12, but let's plan for 14, because you know what? You're going to want changes made. Guarantee it. You don't know what I wouldn't say this, but they don't know what they don't know until they get into it. When they look at it, they go, oh, did I say that? I don't want that. I want something different. In traditional world, we would change the crap out of them, make them miserable. And in the new world, we have contingency and we just draw from that contingency and there's no paperwork. Happier, joy, right? So you can do it. And that's the technique I've always used for years, is add some contingency onto the plan. And then you could use something called story points. And you say that you have 100 story points left. Shop how you want. You want to spend them all on this feature? Go for it. We have no contingency left. And it's beautiful. It turns the power of the scope negotiation over to the business, the product owners, and they love to shop. So they say, actually, no, it's not worth 10 points. I don't want that anymore. That's a beautiful thing. You just saved the company money because they had the discipline to manage their own scope. Do you know how much better your life is as a project manager when you don't have to argue scope anymore? The business is controlling it. It's joy. It's a beautiful thing. So that was the first part. Second part was Parliament of Ottawa. I was at one of my first events I went to when I joined PMI was a global executive council meeting in Ottawa. And we hosted John Deere's of the world, Bosch, Boeing, all those companies from their PMOs who are on the council in Ottawa. And one of the things we got to do was we stayed at the Fairmont. It's right in the corner of where the Parliament is. And one of the things we got to do is we got a tour of the refurbishment of the Parliament buildings. If you don't know, they gutted Parliament Hill. They took the House of Commons and the Senate out and they put it in a building two buildings across the street. All the chairs, all the desks, new carpet. You wouldn't know it, but that's what's happening. They're in different buildings right now because I guess when the Parliament Hill was built, they didn't have internet or air conditioning or typewriters. So they had to multi-billion-dollar project. So that's the story. But wasn't it? So we got to do a tour. It was amazing. And they told us about how they managed it. A huge project, right? Multi-billion-dollar, dozens of project managers, program managers as well. And the director general, I think was her name, it was her title. She was the PMO lead, did a presentation before we went on the tour. And I was tickled because she showed slides of them having a stand-up every morning around a whiteboard with sticky notes on it, in progress, or not started, in progress, done, risks, a corner where they put the risks, And I thought so the long answer to your question, you can combine the techniques. I believe every project manager should understand some basic stuff. And that does not have to be IT. I just gave you an example, this infrastructure project. So just add more ingredients to your pantry. Okay, hopefully this was as fun for you as it was for me. I really enjoyed it. And I see that I've frozen. Can you still hear me?
We can still hear you, Mark.
Yes.
All right, okay, that's a good way to end. The goofy look on my face. All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you so much for your time, Mark. It was awesome.
Okay, I'm looking forward to getting past this and maybe getting together for a real dinner meeting or beverages or something.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone take care. Go get your shots.
There we go. We'll leave it where we started. Go get your shots.
Okay, bye now.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks.